$843 million, Mr Chair. $843 million when the write-down value...
I've called Sue Moroney.
Mr Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to put on record the opposition from the people of the Waikato to this bill, because it may have escaped some people's attention, but actually most of these resources that are being put up on the block actually come from the Waikato region. We've got the dams up and down the Waikato River, we've got the Huntly Power Station, we've got the coal mines of the Huntly region, we've got the geothermal thermal fields of the Wairaki area. So the region that I come from, actually, it's a bit personal. It is a bit personal because this disproportionately affects the Waikato region. And none of those Waikato MPs for the government have at all had the courage to put on record the opposition of the vast majority of people of the Waikato to having their state assets flogged off from underneath them. Because for us, it's not just an issue in the Waikato of why this is so fundamentally wrong economically, but also it is because this actually makes up our geography. These are many of the landmarks of our region, Mr Chair, and yes, Clause 16, I think, is the part that the Waikato people object to most strongly, actually. This is the part, Mr Chair.
I got a voting member in the House. Order. Now, interjections should be relating to the speech and not cross interjections that have got nothing to do with the debate. I want to hear what the Speaker is saying and ask you to tone it down. Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Because I'm talking about the vast majority of the people of the Waikato and why they oppose Part 2 of this bill in particular. Because the thing that worries Waikato people the most is that many of our landmarks can be sold to foreign ownership. And as I was saying, for the rest of the country, this is economic madness, but for us in the Waikato, this is actually deeply personal because it's many of our families who actually built those dams. It is many of our families who built the Huntly Power Station. And so it is about the sweat of our ancestors that actually created these state assets, and yes, we all own them. And so it is not that government's right to sell from underneath the feet of the people of the Waikato those assets to foreign ownership. So I do want to speak in favour to the two amendments put forward in the name of, one of them been put forward in the name of Phil Goff and the other in the name of Chris Farfoy, because those two amendments to Clause 16 and Part 2 of this bill actually would limit the ownership to New Zealand residents. And they'll do it in this way. The amendment from Phil Goff would actually limit the ownership to New Zealand tax residents. And I think that's only fair. That would give the people of the Waikato some comfort that our landmarks aren't going to end up in majority foreign ownership. And then there's the amendment from Chris Farfoy that takes a slightly different approach. It is a very good amendment, and the people of the Waikato would also gain comfort from this because Chris Farfoy's amendment would limit ownership to New Zealand passport holders. And there again, we would know that the Karapiro Dam that we drive across, that the Aotearoa Dam, all of those dams up and down the Waikato actually would remain in New Zealand ownership. And I think that's deeply personal for the people of the Waikato. But I also, Mr Speaker, want to talk about the lunacy of what this part does around the Treaty of Waitangi commitments. Because what are we going to do in the Waikato? The Waikato River, well, Tauhanarari might like to listen to this because the Waikato River is co-managed. It's co-managed between Tainui and Environment Waikato, a fantastic model, actually brought about by Labour, but good on the current government for keeping it going. But here's the problem. What are we going to do about 51% only having the Treaty of Waitangi obligations of the dams up and down the Waikato River applying to it? What are we going to do? Are we going to say, when it comes to opening up the floodgates and putting water down the Waikato River from the Karapiro Dam, we're going to consult Māori, but if it's the Aotearoa Dam, we're not going to consult Māori? Is that what it's going to mean? Because I want members opposite. In fact, I'd ask ask the Minister to get up and explain exactly how this is going to shake down. If that state-owned enterprise is split and only 51% of those dams have Treaty of Waitangi obligations attached to them, and the other 49% don't, how literally are we going to manage that when it comes to the water resource management, when it comes to actually consulting Māori, when it comes to the co-management of the Waikato River?
Mr. Chair. David Bennett.
I move that the question be now put.
Chris Hipkins.